So Guillaume, what will the opening film look like this year?
Well, I put on a dynamic little tune.
And then I talk about the joy of getting together with the shareholders.
That doesn't look like Air Liquide to me. I'd put this instead.
Oh, that's better. Why not adding some real voiceovers rather than our shareholder voices?
You are right, it will be much better.
Then I'd put up some really nice pictures of all the great projects we did in 2022. Like the Advanced Program, Génération Hydrogène, let's see, the appointment of François Jacob as Chief Executive Officer, renewable energy contracts in South Africa, oh, and also the US inauguration in Nevada of the group's largest hydrogen liquefier in the world.
Oh, great. And then not only pictures, but words that bring us together.
Performance?
Yes, I like performance. Can we add advance?
Oh no, bigger than that.
Yes, that's good there. Then trust?
Good idea.
Cheerfulness.
I'd say belonging. No, let's say pride.
Pride. Very good. That really shows how important the shareholder base is to Air Liquide.
And of course, let's not forget community, proximity.
And dialogue. Oh, that reminds me, I have a question to ask Benoit Potier during the general meeting this year.
And finally, I would add some portraits of the shareholders. Men, women, of all origins, of all ages.
How many are we right now? 500,000?
No, that was last year. This year, we're almost 750,000 individual Air Liquide shareholders.
That's really a big number. You have to write that down.
It's a pretty good opening film, don't you think, Guillaume?
It is good. I think the only thing that's missing is the traditional final word.
We welcome you all
To our General Meeting 2023.
Mesdames, Messieurs et chers actionnaires,
Ladies
c'est un
and
grand
gentlemen, dear
plaisir pour moi, en
shareholders, I'm
qualité de président
delighted
du
as
conseil
the
d'administration du
chairperson
groupe de
of
vous
the board of
accueillir
your group to
ici
welcome you here
au Palais des
at
Congrès
the
et de
Palais des
pouvoir
Congrès
échanger en
and
direct avec
to
vous
be able to
au
have
cours de
this
notre
direct
assemblée
discussion
générale.
with you during the course of
Pour
our
commencer,
general
je
meeting.
souhaiterais
First
avant
of
tout
all,
remercier nos
I
deux
would
actionnaires,
like to thank
Nathalie et Guillaume,
two
qui ont bien
shareholders,
voulu
Nathalie and Guillaume,
participer à la
who
réalisation
agreed to
de la
take
courte
part
vidéo
in
introductive que nous venons de diffuser. Je pense
filming the
d'ailleurs
short
qu'ils sont
introductory
présents
video that we
avec
have just
nous.
shown,
Merci
and I think
à
they're
eux.
with us in the
Nous
hall.
prendrons le temps
Many thanks to you.
non seulement de
We will
partager
take the
avec
time
vous la
not only to
stratégie
share
d'Air
with
Liquide, mais
you
aussi de répondre à
Air
vos
Liquide's
questions au cours de
strategy,
la
but we will
session
also be
d'échange
answering
que
your
nous aurons
questions
un petit peu plus tard
during
dans
the
cette
question and answer session
J'en
we'll be
profite
having a bit
pour
later.
accueillir
I would also like to take this
ceux
opportunity to wish a
nombreux qui
warm
nous
welcome
rejoignent pour la
to
première fois en
those
tant
of you, and there are many of you, who are joining us for the first time as individual shareholders, and I would like to thank you all for your display of trust in us. This General Meeting 2023 is the first that we are holding since we set up our new governance structure, and this has been fully satisfactory as reflected in the performance for 2022. François Jacob, the CEO appointed last June, will be taking the floor later on to tell you about the achievements of the past 12 months. I would now like to greet all of the members of the board of the directors. I have to my right Xavier Villard, who's the lead director, and to my right François Jacob, who is the CEO, as well as to my right Madame Fatima Tiglaline and Mr. Philippe Dubrul, directors representing employees, Madame Geneviève Berger, Madame Kim Ann Mink, and Madame Sean Herbert Jones, and to my left, Madame Annette Winkler, Mr. Ayman Ezat, Mr. Bertrand Dumazy, and Madame Monica De Virgilis. You are gathered here for the combined shareholders meeting as convened in the BLO dated 20th of March 2023 and announced in the official bulletin of announcements on the same day. All holders of registered shares as well as the statutory auditors have been duly convened to this general meeting, and these discussions are being broadcast live on the Society the group's website, and I would like to welcome all those of you who are connected through the webcast. This event is open to other persons than shareholders, namely journalists who may be in the room. I recall that it is forbidden to film or to transmit footage of the meeting without the company's authorization. You have a tablet, and the functioning of this will be explained a little bit later. We will now set up the AGM Bureau. As the chairperson of the board, I will be chair of the Bureau, and I recommend as scrutineers Madame Frédéric Debril, representing Amundi, and Mr. Ronan Poupon, representing DNCA. They are the two members of the meeting holding the largest number of votes, and they are sitting here in the front row. With the agreement of the scrutineers, Mr. Thibault Delorme, who is the Legal Affairs Director of the group, sitting in the front row, will be the secretary. We have now set up the bureau. The agenda has been published, and you can see it displayed behind me on the screen. Therefore, as I was saying, from the attendance sheet, we have 456 shareholders holding 937,035 shares who are present or duly represented, 78,061 shareholders holding 301,174,593 shares have voted by correspondence, either by postal ballot or through the internet. The total number of shareholders either present or represented or who voted by correspondence therefore stands at 78,517 shareholders, for a total of 302,111,628 shares out of 521,885,865 shares with voting rights. That is 57.89% of shares, and I recall that each share holds one vote. The general meeting, with over a quarter of the shares, therefore, with voting rights, means that we have achieved the quorum, and I declare the general meeting open. The agenda, which has been published, is displayed on the screen. All the documents required under current regulations has been submitted to the Bureau. Furthermore, all the preliminary documents have been made available to the shareholders at the head office via the shareholder department and also on the website of the group. No shareholder has requested the inscription of new agenda items or of draft resolutions. The Economic and Social Committee has received in timely manner communication of the documents and information submitted to the general meeting. It has not used its voting right regarding the addition of draft resolutions to the agenda. As is the case each year, I suggest, in order to save time for discussion, that we do not read out the reports of the board, the main elements of which will be presented hereafter. In preparing for this general meeting, we have conducted a survey with over 4,600 shareholders who responded, and I would like to thank them for doing so. This was extremely useful in order to establish the topics that you wish to see discussed, and the outlook for 2023 and our hydrogen activities were the key subjects cited. I will then present the strategic framework with a brief overview of the global situation and its implications for our group. I will then present the strategic framework with its implication for the group. François Jacob will present the strategy, progress on environmental and social matters, as well as the outlook for 2023. I will then continue with governments, and then I will give the floor to Xavier Villard, Chair of the Remunerations Committee, and finally the statutory auditors will summarize their reports. We will then go on to the question and answers session, which we wanted to give more time for in order to be able to have a proper discussion and debate with the room. You will be able to take the floor live, and for those of you who so wish, you can, from now and until 4 p.m., send your questions by text message to the number which you see display on the side walls of the room, which is also on your pass. This method respects your wish for anonymity, and then we will close the general meeting with a vote on the resolutions using the tablet that was given to you when you signed the attendance sheet, and I will now hand over to Jérôme Pelletan. Jérôme, over to you. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, in 2022, your group posted extremely robust results, both financial and extra-financial. This performance is all the more remarkable since the environment was very complex. It was marked by the conflict in Ukraine, the sanitary situation in China, which led to an acceleration in the rise of energy prices. Regarding financial results, I will emphasize 4 points. First of all, the strong growth in sales, then a significant increase in the operating margin, and then continuing high level of investment decisions and the continued strengthening of our balance sheet. In 2022, we posted record sales of almost 30 billion euros. This is up strongly by plus 28% as published and plus 7% on a comparable basis, excluding the energy impact. The rise in energy prices, in particular natural gas, is contractually reinforced to our large industry clients. In 2022, this contributed to by plus 15% to the increase in our published sales, in particular in Europe. The gas and services activity, which accounts for 95% of our sales, was up plus 6% on a comparable basis. All of our major geographies are up. First and foremost, the Americas and Asia Pacific, which posted respective increases of plus 10 and plus 7%. Regarding the businesses, electronics and industrial merchant were particularly robust. Regarding our other businesses, the consolidated sales of engineering and construction were up plus 21% in 2022. The order intake was for third-party clients and for the needs of the group, thus in excess of 1 billion euros for the second year in a row. They are driven in particular by projects in the energy transition, electronics and large industry. Regarding global markets and technologies, sales were up plus 26%. They are underpinned by the increase in the biomethane business. The operating income recurring was up again by plus 70 basis points, excluding the energy effect. At 4.9 billion euros, the operating income recurring is up strongly on a comparable basis by plus 10.5%. This increase in the margin is due to several factors. First of all, an adapted pricing policy in the industrial merchant business in order to deal with inflation. Next, with efficiencies, which stood at almost 380 million euros in 2022, which is an excellent result given the challenging economic environment, which made it more difficult to achieve savings on procurement. And finally, the dynamic management of the asset portfolio with 7 disposals and 20 additional further acquisitions in 2022. The strong increase in revenue and the further improvement in the margin enabled an increase of plus 17.3%, excluding currency impacts of net profit recurring, which stood at 3.2 billion euros. Furthermore, the balance sheet was further strengthened. The cash flow, up plus 10%, excluding currency impact, enabled us to continue to reduce our debt load while financing our investments and our dividend payout. Regarding value sharing, on which we have had questions, I emphasize that the amounts paid out to our employees, including salaries, but also profit sharing and other items, are over 3 times above that of dividends. The net debt to equity ratio of the group stands at 42% versus 48% at the end of 2021. And finally, the return on capital employed stands at 10.3%. It is ahead of the objective set 1 year early as part of our strategic advance plan. Our cash level has enabled us to finance all of our investments. Our investment decisions were particularly robust in 2022, posting a record level of 4 billion euros. Furthermore, the portfolio of opportunities on a 12-month basis stood at 3.3 billion euros at the end of 2022. It is underpinned to the tune of 40% by projects linked to the energy transition. Furthermore, the performance communicated a few days ago on first quarter 2023 confirms this excellent trend, which is up by 6.2% on a comparable basis. Moving on now to extra financial performance, which is an integral part of our advanced strategic plan. This plan includes a reduction of -33% of our CO2 emissions in absolute terms on scopes 1 and 2 by 2035 and carbon neutrality by 2050. Our emission reduction trajectory by 2035 has been validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative as being consistent with climate science. Against this backdrop, we maintain our ambition to start the decrease by 2025 of our CO2 emissions in absolute terms. In 2022, for the second consecutive year, these emissions remained stable against a backdrop of strong growth. I recall that our decarbonization strategy is based on 3 main drivers. First of all, the decarbonization of our industrial assets through our efficiency drive and new technologies such as electrolysis. Next, the supply of low-carbon energy, which led in 2022 to securing 350 megawatts of renewable power. Finally, the deployment of innovative technologies for carbon capture. Air Liquide's commitment to sustainable development goes well beyond climate objectives. The social and societal dimensions are part and parcel of our roadmap. The group has thus committed for its employees, be it in terms of safety, gender, equality, or social coverage. First of all, on safety, this is an absolute priority for an industrial group such as Air Liquide. In 2022, we reduced workplace accidents with work days lost by 11%. Next, gender equality. This involves increasing the number of women amongst our engineers and executives. It stands at 31.5% versus 26% in 2012. We're aiming for 35% by 2025. Finally, the establishment of a common social security coverage. 42% of our 67,100 employees around the world now have this, with a goal of 100% of employees covered by 2025. This includes health insurance coverage, life insurance, and paid maternity leave for 14 weeks. Your group has also committed more broadly to society as a whole, in particular through the Access Oxygen program. Through this program, 1.8 million persons now have facilitated access to medical oxygen in low to medium-income countries. To summarize, notwithstanding a complex, changing environment, Air Liquide has posted very robust results in 2022. The group has thus launched its advanced strategic plan on an excellent base, both in financial and extra financial terms. For 2023, Air Liquide is therefore confident in its ability to further increase its operating margin and to achieve net profit recurring at constant exchange rates. Ladies and gentlemen, ex-shareholders, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Jérôme, for this presentation of the financial and non-financial results. Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, a year ago we implemented a new mode of management the head of the group throughout the year. François and I have shared our assessments, our points of vigilance, our strengths, our weaknesses, and our vision to ensure perfect strategic continuity for the group. We are therefore fully fit for purpose, and I welcome that year after year your group has displayed great resilience with both steady and solid performance. Jérôme Pelletan, our Chief Financial Officer, has just demonstrated that once again. I'd like to repeat here once again with conviction that the term performance means comprehensive performance and covers all the financial, environmental, societal, and governance criteria. These criteria are inextricably linked, and because the attainment of such a level of performance is never an accident, I'd like on behalf of the board to first and foremost thank all the Air Liquide employees, wherever they are in the world. Our collective success is the fruit of their collective ability to meet the challenges and to project themselves forward. And I congratulate them for their work and commitment, particularly at the present time. Thank you. Let's now go back briefly over the global context to analyze some of the implications for our group and to stress our strengths to adapt with success. It's a fact. The global context for a number of years now is of growing, indeed unprecedented complexity. Why unprecedented? It's true the complexity of the world isn't a new development. We've already addressed it here. But when we recall the highlights of the past year, we can see a development fundamentally different from that we have seen these past few years. Indeed, the world is no longer facing up to successive but concomitant tensions constituting a web that's difficult to untangle. We have, first of all, the climate change. We see the effects on a daily basis. The price of energy almost doubled. Inflation affecting all. Conflict at our doorstep after a difficult period of the global pandemic. All these developments have profound but interconnected repercussions geopolitically, economically, and for our societies. To return to global stability and prosperity will require comprehensive solutions and adopt a systemic approach, be it for growth, resource and wealth management, social situations, or geopolitical balance. To achieve that, we will probably have to accept a long-term approach, which for a group such as ours means anticipating and continuing to act with a long-term vision. The history of Air Liquide, more than 100 years old, is marked by external events, sometimes serious, or periods of external tension, as well as periods of prosperity, but we've always been able to overcome them, find the road to success, and these episodes have, by way of virtue, prompting us to consider, analyze the situations differently. We've learned the lessons that are necessary. We've adapted to become even more resilient. Analyze means tangibly addressing the implications of these tensions for Air Liquide. So I'm going to take three examples that have a direct impact on our clients and patients and thereby change radically their expectations in respect to the group. Firstly, there are the energy and climate challenges. Today, short-term competitiveness of businesses depends in large part on their supply chain, on the goods management of their consumption levels, energy prices, and long-term to reduce their carbon emissions. In other words, issues of energy conservation and efficiency become priority for our clients and changes their expectations, their strategy, and highlights solutions that the group can bring through oxygen, hydrogen, or CO2. But we must realize that this is transforming our relationship with them over the long term. Second example of the impact of the global context on the group, the geopolitical context. And of course, I must begin with our situation in Russia. We've initiated a process of total divestment by offering a buyout of the subsidiary by our local management teams through a management buyout. Given the strategic dimension of our activities for the Russian industry, this process is now subject to the approval at the highest level of the authorities in the Russian state. So this process is still pending, but geopolitical situation has its implications on the global economy. The strong commercial tensions between the US and China has multiple impacts on supply chains, customs duties that balance the use of currencies and investment flows on national territories, notably in sectors viewed as strategic. Sovereignty has, so to speak, superseded openness, and it's important for us to adapt our activity and our investments to take account of changes in the political context of countries where we ourselves and our clients operate. Lastly, a word on health. In a post-COVID context, the weakening of healthcare systems, such as the lack of medical care, have a direct impact on the quality of life and needs of our patients, be it in the hospital or in the home. And against this backdrop, there are high expectations for your group to develop new approaches for home care that are both personal, more digital, and better respond to current needs. Now, all these changes are not necessarily simple and straightforward, but as you know, we've learned to navigate chilly winds, and we remain very confident because we believe in progress, resolutely turn to the future by focusing on opportunities and then risks and relying on our strengths that are unique. We'll be able to stay the course. I said last year that we felt ready for the world of tomorrow. I'd like to return now to our strengths to invent the future. These strengths, these assets to address the challenges of the world. What are they? Well, our assets are first and foremost structural, underpin our growth model, a portfolio of business and markets that are highly diversified, allow us to absorb fluctuations and bounce back in the event of a sectoral crisis, and then a balanced geographical distribution. Our footprint is both global and on each territory means that we can adapt our offering to local needs. And then long-term contracts where we have mutual commitments with our clients assure the solidity and guarantee recurring cash flows. It's this unique model of resilience that has always allowed us throughout our history to face up to all situations. And once again, it is this model in 2022 that sustained the remarkable performance of the past year. So fundamentally, it is the bedrock of confidence for the years ahead. Second strengths, our ability to anticipate and be in tune with markets. Rapid anticipation and changes of markets require that we constantly track the underlying trends as well as the signals that come from our clients and our patients, but also society as a whole. Who would have thought a few years back that mobility would have been so radically upended, that the internal combustion engine would have been almost banned in less than a decade and replaced by the electric engine, that we would be short of natural gas, even electricity, that oxygen and respirators would become so critical to face up to a coronavirus pandemic on a global scale, that digital technology would be so important in commerce and interpersonal relations, that capture technologies of CO2 would find markets so swiftly that our precursor gases would be so essential to future generations of semiconductors, and that scarce resources would be the subject of such tensions and sovereignty challenges. Examples are many in number and affect the whole world because we operate henceforth in an environment that's totally interconnected. We've developed this ability to identify and anticipate that I would describe as both broad and deep, thanks to innovation and proximity with our clients. Everywhere we're present, we are rooted locally in each territory, and we serve a great many sectors. All these factors that are specific to us act as antenna and conduits for current and future needs, as well as social barometers. These trends are often not generated but heightened by crises, so to anticipate them is a key driver for resistance and resilience in your group. Third strength, our business. That means that we are particularly well positioned to address current challenges, be they economic, with a very robust balance sheet and access to growing markets. We're fortunate to be able to absorb shocks and protect our stakeholders. Recurring cash flows and innovation guarantee our long-term stability, and then sovereignty challenges because our activities are local, diversified, and we successfully master our supply chains. Climate challenges also. The world must at all costs decarbonize, and we've developed solutions to capture carbon and incorporate it in sequestration chains. Similarly, we supply hydrogen necessary to the transformation of industrial processes. Lastly, societal challenges. In a world where citizens require that businesses have meaning and impact, who better than Air Liquide can provide both to its stakeholders, starting with its shareholders and its employees. Lastly, our fourth strength that's absolutely fundamental is our long-term strategic vision. As you know, our investments and our major industrial projects are over several decades lifespan. They require both a far-reaching vision and decisions taken well ahead of time. And our CO2 targets are a perfect illustration of that. Our ambition, let me remind you, is to be carbon neutral by 2050, and our obligation to deliver requires that we act as of now, and François will show you that later, so that we can meet our commitments. Our initiatives comprise the electrification of our plants that are not already electrified, the capture and sequestration of carbon emitted by a hydrogen plant, by renewable power, the design of plants of low energy production, the use of low emission fuels for our transportation, the reduction of energy consumption for our buildings. As you can see, there's a lot to be done, including in-house. And of course, we're acting to develop hydrogen to promote, as of now, low carbon and renewable hydrogen is absolutely key to prepare for a decarbonized world. It's a genuine shift which must be implemented collectively. It is now that the conditions of an open and dynamic market must be put in place so that hydrogen can find its place in the energy mix, so that we can avoid the emission of 6 billion tons of CO2 by 2050, and that if 20% of global energy is consumed in the form of hydrogen. As you know, Air Liquide on this field is a pioneer, to the point that what is but an intention for some is already a reality for us today. It's our Bécancour electrolyzer of 20 megawatts in Canada that's the largest currently operating in the world. Closer to home in Normandy, we're developing an electrolyzer with a capacity of 200 megawatts, that is 10 times bigger, with this time, and I want to stress this, the full support of France and Europe. It's also thanks to you, our shareholders, who've been supporting us for a long time on this subject that we've been able to preserve our lead. I'd like to share with you an illustration through this video.
There's hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
Clean hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
As hydrogen.
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 The green hydrogen.
Clean hydrogen is the energy of the next generation.
Je crois que vraiment l'hydrogène a un rôle à jouer pour décarboner nos usages.
On a l'impression que tout se fera plus tard, mais en fait c'est aujourd'hui, c'est maintenant.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, I began my presentation by mentioning unprecedented complexity. I'd like to conclude it by saying that in spite of everything, I remain confident in the future, confident in our markets, in our resilience, confident in our ability to decipher the world and to act globally. Our plan, Advanced, is the most recent illustration of that. Also confident in our ability to adapt, to contribute to addressing the major challenges, and to remain determinedly in step with our time. Confident, lastly, in the talents of the group's employees who, at your side, our shareholders, are continuing the great Air Liquide adventure on a daily basis. There are many of you now, over 750 individual shareholders, to demonstrate your trust and confidence to us and to collectively hold 35% of Air Liquide's share capital. More than ever, it is therefore your group. The very good financial performance delivered in 2022 allows the board to propose to you this year a dividend of €2.95 per share in respect of FY 2022. That's an increase of 12.2% over last year, taking into account the allocation of free shares of June 2022. The ex-date for the dividend will be the 15th of May and paid on the 17th of May 2023. Lastly, I'd like to thank you very sincerely for your support and loyalty that compels us. It's thanks to you that we can move forward and invent every day a sustainable future. Rest assured of our full commitment to continue on the path to success. And I'd now like to hand over to our Chief Executive, François Jacov, who will go back over the implementation of our advanced strategic plan. I'd ask you to give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, I'm particularly happy to have this opportunity to have an exchange with you, our shareholders, for my first Air Liquide General Meeting as Chief Executive Officer. I joined the group in 1993, so it's 30 years during which I've been able to fully appreciate your loyalty, your trust, which have been absolutely decisive. And Benoît, I would like to thank you personally for your support, and with every day I see just how valuable that support is. Shareholders, I can well imagine that you have legitimate questions on our ability to invent or reinvent the future in a world which, as Benoît has recalled, is a world of many growing crises. Questions on our level of resistance to geopolitical upheaval. And questions, finally, on our ability to maintain the investments planned under the advance plan. In dealing with these questions, I would like to share with you my deep belief, which is that our group is contributing specific solutions in order to invent now the world of tomorrow, contributing to inventing the future in all strategic key areas for the future of our society. Inventing the future means responding and rising to the challenges of today. 2022 will have strengthened us by validating the pertinence of the advanced plan. 2022 was a year during which we maintained our investments, notwithstanding the upheaval in the world. A year which strengthened the resilience of our business model. Inventing the future also means building on new opportunities, new markets, with a dual ambition for our group, which is to combine financial and extra-financial performance, also to contribute positively to the transformation of the world and to lend meaning to our actions. Inventing the future, finally, is a call on all of us to act for all and to share the value that we create. And with you, our shareholders, with our clients, with the group, and with society, and with our employees, these unbelievable talents that I'm fortunate to manage and whose commitment has never failed. And I would like to thank them very warmly indeed. Strengthening the resilience of our model, building on opportunities, acting for all. These are three strategic pillars which put us resolutely on the path of the future. Let's start off with our resilience model, which has been reinforced with the advance plan. Benoît recalled earlier the strength of the Air Liquide model. With the launch of Advance in 2022, we have further strengthened it. Indeed, the results presented by Jérôme Pelletan bear this out. Not only is our strategy more pertinent than ever, but above all, the strategic direction taken before these upheavals have been accelerated by the global context. Here are a few examples. First of all, energy prices. We have set up tools and training for all of our commercial teams. And through this, we have been able to absorb over 3.6 billion euros of increase in energy prices. Another example is operational efficiencies. Against a backdrop of inflation, our teams have been exemplary in their mobilization in negotiating with all of our suppliers. They've also been able to depend on 400 artificial intelligence projects throughout the group. These examples illustrate our ability to deliver the expected results. And furthermore, notwithstanding the context, we have continued to prepare for the future. For example, through the energy transition. In 2022 alone, we have signed 7 major projects with groups such as Airbus, Aéroports de Paris, Siemens Energy, and Toyota. And 2022 was a record year in terms of investments. I recall that by 2025, for the advance plan, we have committed to 16 billion euros of investment decisions. We have already decided on 4 billion, which proves that the trajectory has not suffered any delay in 2022. Advance has therefore enabled us, as Benoit says, to look far ahead and to act now. In other words, to combine a clear strategy and the required agility in the present environment. I'm very happy to see that this momentum was confirmed by the results for the first quarter of 2023 that we have just published, with an increase of 6.2% in revenue in excess of market expectations. And as I mentioned previously, this performance is global. It's financial and extra-financial. As you have seen, I'm sure, this dual requirement you will have seen in Jérôme's presentation. It's a requirement which has been driven by somebody whom I wish to warmly commend here today, because it's her last day with us. And I'm referring, of course, to Fabienne Lecorvaisier. You know her well, since she was the CFO of the group for almost 10 years, before heading up sustainable development with the same energy and passion and the results that we're all familiar with. And I wish to thank her here very warmly and to wish her every success for her future endeavors. Thank you so much, Fabienne. Now, as you know, an important component of our environmental strategy is to reduce our direct carbon emissions, which we call Scope 1, and the indirect emissions, which we call Scope 2, for example, those which arise from the carbon content of the electricity that we use. But we want to go further, and Air Liquide is the first company in its sector to make a commitment seeking to reduce the carbon footprint of all of our production chain, over which is Scope 3. And finally, because the protection of the planet does not stop with carbon, we're stepping up our efforts in terms of biodiversity. And we're developing new standards in order to ensure responsible management and consumption of water. Now, I cannot talk about performance and resilience without, of course, talking about client satisfaction. This, indeed, is what ensures our continued development. In 2022, like each year, we listened to our clients, and we had over 100,000 feedbacks from our clients. To summarize, here's what they're telling us. They're telling us that they set great store by the relationship that we have established with them. They emphasize in particular our professionalism and our responsiveness. They also tell us that our group in 2022 contributed even more to the implementation of their environmental objectives, in particular through the quality and the variety of the solutions that we provide. And they tell us, finally, that our employees are exemplary in terms of ethical behavior, responsible behavior, as well as complying with safety rules. And that's why we are fully confident in our strategic plan and in our ability to rise to the challenges that lie ahead. Now, I suggest that I would like to talk about our second pillar, which is building on opportunities in order to invent the future. The first opportunity to invent the future, which indeed is a global priority, is decarbonization. Now, everybody's talking about this. Very few people explain it, and fewer still act in a concrete manner. For us, decarbonization is not a fashion, it's at the heart of our strategy in two ways. Firstly, because with the advance plan, we have set ourselves a demanding, ambitious climate strategy with the goal of pursuing profitable growth while reaching carbon neutrality in 2050. And next, because we are accompanying through our solutions our clients in their decarbonization trajectories. Put simply, our goal is to become a climate solutions champion. How will we do this? Well, by offering a whole range of solutions ranging from energy efficiency to the transformation of our clients' processes via hydrogen, CO2 capture, but as well as oxygen and biomethane. But rather than making a long speech, I'll let you see this in pictures.
In the fight against climate change, reducing CO2 emissions is essential. To achieve this, we must all take action. Thanks to its wide range of innovative solutions, Air Liquide plays its part by reducing its own emissions, as well as by helping customers reduce their carbon footprints. Together, we are accelerating the decarbonization of industry and transport. These innovations enable us to modernize our production units, to save energy, and optimize operations in real time in response to customer demand. We also help develop new renewable energy projects and progress towards decarbonizing our production by signing long-term power purchase agreements. Our molecules are our greatest allies. Producing them on site minimizes delivery needs and thus avoids CO2 emissions associated with transport. Molecules also enable us to support our customers in optimizing their processes. Using oxygen, for example, we can improve the efficiency of oxy-combustion and reduce the energy consumption and carbon footprint of the glass industry. With biomethane, waste becomes a great alternative source of clean and renewable energy. Our technologies help valorize biogas into biomethane. It is then used for clean mobility, for domestic or industrial heating, and for production of low-carbon hydrogen. Hydrogen is an essential tool to decarbonize industries that emit CO2 and to support the transition toward clean transport. Large-scale decarbonization is made possible using hydrogen produced through water electrolysis. This process, powered by renewable or nuclear energy, does not emit CO2. The resulting hydrogen has applications in the industrial and heavy mobility sectors. Going further and faster is what accelerating the energy transition is all about. Our CryoCap FG innovation is a unique cryogenic process that captures up to 95% of the CO2 emitted by certain hard-to-abate industries. This CO2 is then purified to be stored or valorized in industrial processes. CryoCap also makes it possible for low-carbon hydrogen to be produced on a large scale. Every day, we're expanding our range of decarbonization offerings, minimizing our own CO2 emissions, while also developing low-carbon solutions for our customers.
In terms of decarbonization, 2022 was a very successful year for the group, with projects of which we can all be proud, and I'm referring in particular to the signing of renewable electricity procurement contracts for the largest oxygen production site in the world with our client Sasol in South Africa, and also in Grand Puy in France, where we have teamed up with TotalEnergies in order to decarbonize the production of air fuel, as well as the oxy-combustion contracts, such as the one we've signed with Veralia for glass production, and the one signed with Constellium for the recycling of aluminium. In a world which awaits pertinent, concrete and long-term solution, this is a whole vista of new opportunities which is opening up for us and which is becoming global. Beyond Europe, which has got things going, I'm referring in particular to the United States, as well as Asia and the Middle East, which have also committed to decarbonization. The second opportunity for inventing the future is in healthcare. This applies in particular to home healthcare, where we're accompanying almost 2 million patients who are suffering from chronic diseases. In 2022, we deployed new digital tools in order to improve the care provided to these patients. And the patients and doctors tell us what makes the difference here is our approach, which is focused on the quality of life, added value and innovation, which are provided to the patient. And this is done at the best possible cost for healthcare systems. The third opportunity for inventing the future is in electronics. 2022 was for Air Liquide a record year in terms of investment in electronics. We have exceeded 1 billion euros in signed contracts. This momentum was particularly evident in Asia as well as the United States and Europe. And there again, our capacity to innovate, which is firmly established in all the regions where we have a presence, is a major asset. And I could continue for at length on other opportunities developed by our teams, be it on quantum computers or electric batteries. But I would leave it at that because I want to keep a few surprises for next year. Well, shareholders, rest assured that these opportunities all have one point in common, which is lending meaning to all of our actions, thus contributing to collective progress. This is the third pillar of our strategy, acting for all. As you will have understood, the ultimate goal of our actions is to move ahead together in order to advance for the benefit of all. This is a fundamental dimension of advance to which we are deeply committed and to which I personally am committed. Indeed, we are, by our very nature, a useful company whose businesses contribute to all sectors of the economy. This essential feature is both an honor and a duty for us. It's sharing the value created, which lends meaning to our performance. And this sharing runs through to all of our stakeholders, for our 3.9 million clients, for whom our solutions a help in making them more, providing better results and decarbonating their business, for our 67,100 employees, as well as their families, for you, close to 750,000 shareholders, for whom the growth in the dividend and the share portfolio is the reward for your loyalty, and finally, for society at large, since looking beyond our role as an economic player, our foundation supports scientific research and the communities where we operate. 60 new projects for access to jobs have been funded by the foundation in 3 years, be it for young people or for people on reinsertion. And of course, I cannot conclude this speech without talking about what the foundation is doing for Ukraine. We have been able to support 40 projects for 60,000 Ukrainian refugees through the foundation, but also through the generosity of 1,200 donors, both shareholders and employees. Some of them are here with us today. I would like to thank you very warmly, because that's what Air Liquide is about too, acting for all to build together a more sustainable, more inclusive, more human world. Acting together with all our stakeholders. And here's the proof of that in pictures.
Bardzo mocno wpłynął na moje życie.
La époque empieza con síntomas de falta de aire.
Comme tout le monde, on a dû faire face à l'inconnu. On s'est retrouvés en première ligne.
That has always been my goal and a dream, to get into a professional career.
企业的发展离不开持续发展。
Mettre ses moyens au service de la nature et pas l'inverse.
Pendant la crise, on a une activité de prise en charge en urgence qui a complètement explosé, avec des besoins en oxygène qui sont devenus absolument critiques.
Gdy wojna wybuchła, bałem się, że rozleje się ona na całą Europę. Ludzie uciekający z Ukrainy przede wszystkim próbowali zaspokoić swoje podstawowe potrzeby, czyli schronienie, ciepłe posiłki, czy również ubrania dla najmłodszych dzieci.
Una vez diagnosticado ya pues se nos ponen los tratamientos. Bueno, los pacientes que precisan oxigenoterapia no siempre son adherentes. Ese es un problema porque está claro que el buen cumplimiento mejora la calidad y alarga la vida.
When you come into a plant that only had male plant managers in the past, it is a little bit of a challenge to gain the trust of the teammates. You have to show and talk to them to make sure that they understand that you're capable of doing the job.
我们是专业提供储罐、小罐、槽车等低温装备以及高压储存装备的。拿冷拉伸工艺来举例，它的过程需要大量的水，因为水资源并非取之不尽、用之不竭。
Besoin d'épargne, c'est pouvoir investir en se disant j'ai d'abord confiance et je laisse mon argent là plutôt qu'ailleurs. Donc il fallait faire d'une pierre deux coups, c'est-à-dire à la fois d'avoir un rendement parce que c'est un investissement financier à la base, mais qui a un sens qui est celui de l'environnement.
Finalement, l'oxygène, c'est assez simple. Néanmoins, l'exécution de quelque chose d'aussi simple avec autant d'efficacité, ça peut être compliqué. Et c'est là que le partenariat stratégique qu'on a avec Air Liquide a donné toute sa dimension.
Air Liquide est un groupe d'avenir parce qu'il est en train de répondre à des questions d'actualité.
在业控的倡议下，我们在能源排放、可持续发展、社会责任有了更深刻的认识。业控的倡议是尽量少用不可再生资源，我们能做的就尽量减少水的浪费。
Dzięki Fundacji Air Liquide i programowi Citizen Network zrealizowaliśmy i zorganizowaliśmy ponad 7 projektów poprzez angażowanie naszych pracowników w trakcie czasu pracy.
De empoderar y formar al paciente para que cumpla bien el tratamiento. La verdad es que nos estáis ayudando bastante con el Consejo Asesor de Pacientes, del que yo tengo la suerte de formar parte. Las empresas de terapias como Air Liquide colaboran mucho y dan talleres, trabajan bien para que el paciente se adapte y pueda tener un buen cumplimiento del tratamiento.
I do feel like I have a place at Air Liquide. I'm seeing more women being supported to take on leadership roles, more women being encouraged to take on operations roles.
Czuję się bardzo dumny, ponieważ udało nam się pomóc wielu osobom w potrzebie.
On avait des véhicules qui circulaient la nuit, qui traversaient toute la France, et à aucun moment on a été en rupture d'oxygène, alors même qu'on était extrêmement exposé de monde.
I can say with confidence to all the women that Air Liquide truly supports women for their careers.
Investir dans Air Liquide, c'est investir dans votre conviction qu'il faut agir, et par Air Liquide, vous agissez de manière démultipliée.
As you would have understood, the upheaval in the world has reaffirmed and strengthened the strategy of the group, which is better prepared and more pertinent than ever in order to rise to future challenges. I hope that as shareholders you are as proud as we are with Benoit, with the board, the executive committee, with all of our teams, to be contributing to inventing the future. Yes, we are inventing the future by making ourselves increasingly useful, by delivering concrete solutions, and by resolutely taking our full part in the positive transformation of tomorrow's world. You may depend on my determination and on that of our team's determination to go ahead confidently and with energy and on the road that we have set out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. And I'd now like to turn to the key points of the corporate governance report issued by your board. Let's start with a short video on the composition of the board and the work undertaken throughout the year 2022. Following today's general meeting, the terms of office of two directors will expire. Those are the terms of Sharon Herbert-Jones and Geneviève Berger. Sharon Herbert-Jones expressed her wish not to solicit the renewal of her term. The board has noted that. We'd like to address to, on behalf of the board, our sincere thanks to her for her contribution throughout her 12 years of service to the work of the board. We'd like to thank her for very strong commitment within the Audit and Accounts Committee, of which she's been a member since 2013 and which she has been chairing since May 2015. Geneviève Berger also expressed her wish not to seek the renewal of the term of her office. The board noted that. We'd like to extend to, on behalf of the board, our warmest thanks to her for contribution to the work of the board since 2015. We'd also like to thank her for her participation to the Environment and Society Committee, of which she's been a member since its inception in 2017. Resolutions 5, 6, 7, and 8 cover the proposed appointments of 4 new directors for a 4-year term: Catherine Guillard, Christina Law, Alexis Perakis-Valat, and Michael Taman. At its meeting held on the 15th of February 2023, our board appointed provisionally Monica de Virgilis to replace Annette Bronder. The latter left her duties on the 3rd of January this year when she took up an executive position with an audit firm that's incompatible with her remaining in office. And so you're asking the 9th resolution to ratify the co-optation of Monica de Virgilis as director for the duration of the term of office of Annette Bronder that remains to run. That's up until the AGM 2024. Catherine Guillard, Christina Law, Alexis Perakis-Valat, Michael Taman, and Monica Virgilis will now introduce themselves in this short video.
C'est un grand honneur d'être proposé pour entrer au conseil d'administration d'Air Liquide, qui est un fleuron de l'industrie mondiale. Air Liquide est une entreprise unique qui s'est créée de la valeur dans la durée pour l'ensemble de ses parties prenantes, actionnaires, clients, salariés et fournisseurs, grâce à une stratégie claire, des choix technologiques pertinents et des équipes talentueuses et expérimentées. Participer à cette aventure humaine, capitalistique et technologique est une grande motivation pour moi. Contribuer au succès du plan Advance, qui vise à aligner performances industrielles, financières et environnementales, est un magnifique défi à relever. Dans ce contexte, je pourrais apporter au conseil d'administration d'Air Liquide ma double expérience de direction générale d'entreprise et celle d'administrateur indépendant de grandes sociétés cotées. Ma contribution portera plus particulièrement sur les domaines suivants: transformation des entreprises, notamment par la digitalisation et l'introduction de nouvelles technologies, finance et marchés financiers, design et exécution de stratégies de décarbonation et enfin, ma connaissance des secteurs de la mobilité, de l'industrie et des services. Je vous remercie pour votre confiance et pour votre attention.
I'm truly honored to be nominated to join the board of Air Liquide. I'm particularly inspired by the company's corporate value and growth model, which combines financial performance and sustainable development. I'll be thrilled to join this journey of actively contributing to building a better and more sustainable world. I have more than 25 years of executive leadership experience across geographies in the consumer sector with a number of long-standing multinational companies, as well as independent board director experience with leaders in healthcare and business education. I believe I can bring unique strategic insights from the consumer and healthcare industries, a deep understanding of the rapidly evolving digital and innovation landscape, and I will provide a global perspective, particularly from Asia-Pacific and across emerging markets. I'm eager to work with the board and executive team to help achieve the company's vision and ambition, and to deliver against the expectations of the shareholders and society at large. Thank you.
Je suis profondément curieux. Ma carrière chez L'Oréal m'a permis de découvrir une grande diversité de pays, de cultures et de défis à relever. Rejoindre le conseil d'administration d'Air Liquide serait une nouvelle aventure passionnante. J'aimerais contribuer humblement au succès d'un leader mondial qui œuvre dans un domaine tellement essentiel pour nos vies et celles de nos enfants, et dont les valeurs rejoignent mes convictions profondes. Ce qui m'attire aussi, c'est de faire partie d'un collectif à la fois soudé et divers. Je pense pouvoir apporter ma connaissance de l'international, mais aussi mon savoir-faire en matière de pilotage des grands enjeux de transformation. J'aurai à cœur de m'investir totalement sur tous les sujets où mon expertise pourra apporter de la valeur ajoutée. La feuille de route d'Air Liquide est très ambitieuse et j'ai hâte de vous rejoindre pour participer à cette grande aventure collective. Je vous remercie.
Hello, my name is Mike Thaman. I'm the former chair and CEO of Owens Corning. Owens Corning is a leading global building materials company operating in over 30 countries. During my 28-year career at Owens Corning, I had the opportunity to work with our customers and visit our operations around the world, including living and working in Belgium for 2 years. One of my proudest achievements was our leadership on sustainability. We began our sustainability journey over 15 years ago and have established a strong track record for both transparency in reporting and the achievement of aggressive science-based goals. I believe that I can bring relevant experience having worked in the global industrial markets. As a business leader, I understand the constant need to stay competitive while always striving to create a better future. I'm honored to be considered by the shareholders for the opportunity to serve on the Air Liquide board. In addition to my 18 years of service to the Owens Corning board, I bring nearly 2 decades of additional public company experience to Air Liquide. I'm appreciative of the potential opportunity to serve this wonderful company. Thank you.
Ma motivation est au top. Air Liquide est une société iconique pour tout ingénieur. Je suis ravie d'avoir rejoint le conseil d'Air Liquide depuis le 15 février dernier et je remercie de sa confiance. Ma contribution vient de mes expériences acquises dans le secteur des semi-conducteurs, à des postes opérationnels, ainsi que celles acquises en tant que dirigeante du CEA d'abord, et en tant qu'administratrice et présidente du conseil d'administration de sociétés dans le secteur de l'énergie. 3 ingrédients, je l'espère, vont me permettre d'apporter de la valeur, la connaissance de 2 industries clés pour Air Liquide, l'expérience de gouvernance de grands groupes cotés et la capacité à avoir une vision d'ensemble combinée à la rigueur du détail. Je remercie de votre attention et j'espère que vous m'accorderez votre confiance.
So, after today's general meeting and subject to the approval by the meeting of resolutions 5 to 9, your board of directors will be comprised of 14 members, comprising 6 women, 5 elected by the general meeting, and 5 members of foreign nationality. This composition reflects the diversity and experience, expertise and culture sought by the board. Turning now to the composition of the committees, the board that met today, before today's meeting, decided to make the following appointments within the Audit and Accounts Committee: Catherine Guillouard as chair, Bertrand Dumassy as member. For the Environment and Society Committee, Monica de Virgilis as member. These appointments will come into force after today's general meeting, subject to the approval of the resolutions proposed regarding the composition of the board of directors. I'll now hand over to Xavier Huillard, chair of the Remuneration Committee, who will present to you the resolutions pertaining to the remuneration of executive officers.
Mesdames, Messieurs
Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, good afternoon. Your meeting is invited this year to vote on 7 resolutions pertaining to the remuneration of executive officers. Firstly, the 11th resolution concerns the remuneration paid in 2022 or awarded in respect of 2022 to Benoît Potier, your Chairman and Chief Executive for the period of 1st of January, 31st of May 2022. In accordance with the policy you approved last year, this remuneration comprised an annual fixed portion at €1,325,000, stable since 2018, calculated, of course, on a pro rata basis. That's an amount of 552,083 years, and a variable portion also pro rata of €921,979, reflecting the excellent financial performance of the company in 2022 and the full attainment of qualitative targets. The board considered as excellent the performance of the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, both in terms of corporate social responsibility, with notably the launch of the action plans linked to the advance plan, as well as that of the organization and human resources, with work hailed on the governance and preparing its successions, and the launch of initiatives aimed at reaching the human resource targets of the advance plan. I'd also like to stress the excellent individual performance of Benoît Potier in a pretty contrasted global context. Short-term remuneration 2022 remains almost stable versus 2021 on an annualized basis. In accordance with provisions of the AFEP-MEDEF code, Benoît Potier did not benefit from the allocation of performance shares in 2022. The 12th resolution concerns the remuneration paid in 2022 or awarded in respect of 2022 to your Chief Executive Officer, François Jacob, for the period 1st of June through 31st December 2022. In accordance with previously approved policy, this remuneration comprises an annual fixed portion of 1.1 million, calculated on a pro rata basis. That's 641,667, and a variable portion pro rata 912,450 years, reflecting the quality of performance of financial criteria as well as qualitative. As with Benoît Potier, the financial criteria variable portion are all achieved beyond maximum. As regards qualitative criteria, the board viewed as very good the performance of your executive, both in terms of CSR as well as organization and human resources. Were in particular noted the acceleration of actions put in place for attaining CSR targets, the talents development policy, and the development of action plans in favor of diversity and inclusion. I'd also like to underscore the remarkable individual performance of François Jacob, who, when he took up his duties in the previously mentioned complex environment, displayed strong commitment and expressed his gratefulness to teams. Remuneration, lastly, comprises an allocation of performance shares for an IFRS value of 961,965 euros for the period 1st of June, 31st of December 2022. 13th resolution concerns remuneration paid in 2022 or awarded in respect of 2022 for the chairman of the board for the period 1st of June, 31st December 2022. In accordance with the policy previously approved, remuneration comprised an annual fixed portion of 800,000 euros, calculated pro rata for 466,667. Your chairman benefits from no variable remuneration nor exceptional long-term remuneration. In the 14th resolution, you're asked to vote comprehensively on the remuneration of all executive officers as well as non-executive directors. Amongst the information supplied, you find the annualized remuneration of your executive as compared to the average and median remuneration of employees of the company. And since last year, with the average remunerations of the employees of the group in France, the ratio for your executive is shown on the screen. The remaining information is available on pages 206 and 207 of the Universal Registration Document. The remuneration of non-executive directors set in accordance with the policy 2022 as part of the unchanged package of 1.3 million euros that you approved in 2020 is to pound on pages 208, 209 of the Universal Registration Document. You're asked to vote also on the remuneration policy through resolutions 15 to 17, and it's set out on pages 227 to 236 of the Universal Registration Document. In general and structural terms, the remuneration of the executives is in continuity with that approved by the AGM in 2022. The financial criteria of the annual variable portion are based on the growth in EPS and revenue. Personal criteria incorporate CSR and organization as well as human resources targets. The performance conditions applicable to performance shares link to the ROCE, return on capital employed, total shareholder return, and environmental criteria aligned on the target to reduce CO2 emissions in absolute terms in accordance with the group's climate targets. These criteria reflects the group's strategy combining, as was set out at length in the videos, both financial as well as non-financial performance. On this basis, the remuneration policy of François Jacov is in continuity with that of 2022, is put to you through 15th resolution and provides for an annual fixed remuneration of 1.1 million, a target variable portion equal to 120% of the fixed part and limited to 150% of said fixed part, and an annual allocation of a long-term incentive of the order of 1,650,000 euros. François Jacov will not receive any remuneration as a director. François will continue to benefit from the supplementary retirement schemes put in place by your company, and also to benefit in the same terms as those approved by the AGM last year of a termination allowance and an allowance in return for a non-compete commitment. Then you're invited in the 16th resolution to vote on Benoît Pottier's remuneration policy as chairman of the board. This policy is identical to that approved last year, and he will receive a base remuneration of 800,000 euros with no variable remuneration, either long-term or exceptional, that would be awarded to it, or any remuneration to him as a board member. Lastly, the director's remuneration policy is the subject of the 17th resolution. It's also similar to that approved last year. The variable remuneration is preponderant and is based on the actual participation of each director at meetings. Additional remuneration is paid to the lead director and committee chairs. This policy also promotes attendance and actual participation of directors at the work of your board and its various committees. The package of 1.3 million euros that you approved in 2020 remains unchanged. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Xavier. Let's now turn to the report of the statutory auditors.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, good afternoon. On behalf of the statutory auditors, PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG, I'm delighted to report on the independent mission that you have entrusted us with. Our reports on 2022 are to be found in the convening notice to this general meeting, as well as in the 2022 Universal Registration document. We have submitted 7 reports to you. Reports on the annual and consolidated financial statements, a report on related party agreements, and 4 reports on share capital transactions. We have also published a report that is not accompanied by a resolution at this general meeting. This is the report on the consolidated extra-financial performance of the group. I also am proposing, as is customary at this general meeting, to present the highlights of our reports. First of all, our report on the annual financial statements of the company, to be found on pages 335 to 337 of the Universal Registration document. As part of our diligence, we considered the assessment of equity shares as a key point of our audit. We can certify that the annual financial statements are faithful and accurate under French accounting rules and principles, and provide an accurate reflection of the business over the past year and of the financial position and situation of the company at the 31st of December 2022. Our second report is on the consolidated financial statements, to be found on pages 318 to 321 of the Universal Registration document. Our work on the consolidated financial statements are intended to provide the assurance that the accounts do not include any significant anomalies. Our global auditing approach is suited to the businesses and the various activities of the group, as well as its organizational structure. Our report on the consolidated financial statements emphasizes the key points that are representative of what we have considered to be the most sensitive areas in our opinion. 2 of this concerns the financial industries business. First of all, the qualification of the contracts and the modalities for recognizing the revenue. Next, the amortization period for the production assets and the evaluation of their retrievable value. Finally, our third point in the audit has involved the implementation of goodwill depreciation tests. The audit committee and the board of your company were kept regularly informed of our work. In concluding, we are able to deliver an unqualified opinion on the consolidated financial statements of the group for 2022, which are presented and are being submitted under resolution number 2. We have also ensured that the management report included the consolidated extra-financial performance declaration for your company. This extra-financial declaration includes the reporting duties, which are mandatory under the European taxonomy. Our third report is on the related party agreements, to be found on page 464 of the Universal Registration document. We were not informed of any new convention or related party agreement in 2022. The related party agreement on the life insurance contract for Mr. Benoît Potier, which has already been approved by the general meeting, previous general meeting, continued during the past year. And finally, for the extraordinary general meeting of this combined general meeting, you have the reports related to share capital transactions, to be found on pages 465 to 468. And these are covered by resolutions 18 to 22, authorizing transactions that may have an impact on the equity capital of your company, namely through capital reduction, capital increase, through the issuance of securities with preferential subscription rights, or securities providing access to the share capital while maintaining preferential subscription rights and capital increase reserved for employees. These reports do not include any particular comments or observations, and we will draw up additional reports where, in the event that the Board of Directors uses the delegations of authority. Chairman, late shareholders, thank you very much indeed.
Merci, et nous arrivons donc au terme.
Thank you. So this marks the end of the presentations. We'll now move on to the questions and answers session.
Chaque actionnaire ayant droit à la préservation de son
Each shareholder has the right to preserve his or her anonymity and to protect his image, and therefore shareholders who do not wish to appear on the films shown on the internet will avoid introducing themselves when they ask their question. I recall, before we open the discussion, how this works. During the session, you may ask your questions directly by requesting the floor, bearing in mind that we have gathered your questions by text message until 4 o'clock. Now, consistent with legal provisions, namely that answers from the board to written questions before the general meeting be published on the group website, and in order to allow as much time as possible to discussions with the shareholders in the room, I propose that we do not take them up here again. What you should know is that these questions, there are more than 20 of them, mainly covered the climate targets of the group and the hydrogen goals, as well as social, societal responsibility and the fiscal responsibility and lobbying. The board's answers are therefore available on the website under the general meeting section. So we will move on. We will start with questions that are asked orally, and we'll analyze the SMS. So we'll start off with S. Sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Luchet. I have several questions. First of all, the increase in Total's involvement in the oil fields in Qatar. Are you going to increase this pro rata for hydrogen? I'd like to know whether, technically speaking and economically speaking, it would be possible through electrolysis to operate and alternatively, depending on the cost of electricity, which varies on a daily basis and even on an hourly basis for that matter. And last question, in the agreement with Siemens, as always with the Germans, the industrial part is going to be, right, well, there are 3 questions there. Thank you, sir. Now, I'll ask François to take the first question on Qatar, and I'll take the following questions. François? Good afternoon, sir. Well, your question concerns the natural gas field of Qatar. These are sources of helium for us. Now, we're not in the natural gas business, as you know, but some very specific sources of helium, of natural gas, some contain helium in low quantities, less than 1%, very often even a fraction of 1%. And this enables us to extract with Air Liquide technology helium that we then supply globally to our clients, either for medical research purposes, for medical imaging, for example, or for the electronic sector. Now, the resources of helium are quite limited. Qatar is one of those major sources, and we have in particular the United States. Historically, Algeria is one of those sources. For our part, our main sources are in Qatar and in the United States. At present, we are looking at a capacity increase in Qatar, not specifically what has just been announced with Total, because it's the joint venture company with the local players, Qatar Petroleum, which could provide the quantities of helium that we would need to purify for our own business. Now, we're looking at this, yes, but in actual fact, nothing has yet been done or decided upon for this new source that Total is going to be putting into production. Thank you very much, Francois. Now, your second question on hydrogen. Now, in technical and economic terms, can we efficiently use electrolysis and other sources as an alternative, depending, if I understood correctly, on the availability of renewable electric power, and does this make sense in cost terms? Now, in actual fact, the technologies which are used for electrolysis are diverse. We have alkyne technologies, which are basic technologies. They're pretty robust, which have been in existence for a long time, and which usually are technologies which are not subjected to rapid fluctuation. So these are technologies which are used as a basis for electricity supply. Now, the M technologies, M and proton, is much more flexible technology which can produce hydrogen as soon as there is power. That's the technology that we would use in order to connect it to the renewable network for power production in general. And this brings me to Siemens Energy. Our agreement with Siemens is a technological agreement for industrializing the technology, the PEMS, membrane exchange with protons. This is what we're going to be manufacturing. We have been very careful from the outset with Siemens to properly allocate the industrial part, the manufacturing of the electrolysis, between Germany and France. Not that that's necessarily ideal, but we have drawn on our respective strengths. So the manufacturing of the modules, which is Siemens's know-how, and then the assembly of the modules, which is in France, and it'll be spread between both countries. It's a Franco-German and a European initiative, and with Siemens, I think we've held very constructive discussions in order to implement this agreement. So in response to the 100% industrialization in Germany, I don't think that'll happen. I think we're off on a sound footing here. And I'll take the second question, which was on water.
Yes, Patrick Raison, good afternoon. I represent the National Association of French Shareholders. A question regarding the situation in China. The country's opening up again. Could you tell us a bit about 2022 and the outlook in 2023? Thanks. Thank you for your question. So, owing to the COVID management situation in China, we had, a whole period during which sales were limited, volumes down, the economic activity in China was lower, so we lost that growth driver. Business was running, but we had not significant growth as we had at previous years. The good news, last year there was a shift on the zero COVID policy, and since the Chinese New Year has passed, business is picking up again in China, so we reason to believe that business volumes will be up in 2023. Francois said a couple of words about performance in the first quarter. We're already seeing a slight improvement on volumes in China, so we can expect things to recover. Thank you for your question. I'm going to take a question further up the back of the hall. Next question, please. Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to know why what is working at Sasol has not expanded and developed elsewhere. What's working well at Sasol isn't working throughout the world. Well, I'm not quite sure of the point you're referring to of what works well, because there are a great many things that work well at Sasol. So Sasol, we have largest oxygen production that gasifies coal to transform it into chemicals and petroleum. The originality of what we do is we propose to buy out the oxygen production site, once again, the largest in the world. We didn't stop there, and we conclude an agreement with the client in order to have a decarbonization pathway, extremely aggressive, because the target is to reduce CO2 emissions by 30–40% linked to oxygen production. You know that oxygen doesn't produce any CO2, but the power, the electricity you buy emits CO2. If to manufacture electricity, use fossil fuels or coal, which is the case in South Africa. In the majority, because that's the resource they use. So we've committed with the client to change the way in which the units are operated there. We bring all our know-how in terms of efficiency. For a year now, we've managed to reduce the consumption because overall we operate the plants better with technology and know-how. What we've done is that we've launched tenders to have developers who develop wind farms and PV farms so as to produce renewable power that will drive the oxygen units. About 500 megawatts of new renewable energy capacity to be installed to decarbonize sites. So it's a great industrial success because it's our core business on a long-term contract, 15-year contract, but it's also fully aligned with our net zero strategy. It's pretty unique in the world, bringing together the skills of Air Liquide and the determination of a client to go in that direction. We haven't found any other clients who wanted to commit so aggressively to that. A number of sites that are similar in China. If we find similar opportunities, then of course we'll look at them. Thank you for that. Let's take the next question over there on the left. I've got several questions. So 13% of revenue, health, worldwide, 23% in very few revenue in health compared to total revenue in Asia and Africa. As compared to America, and you said, Mr. Jacquot, that China wasn't at all ready to allow us to establish ourselves in that. Has it changed, given the aging of the Chinese population that's happening very soon? India is one of the key targets for healthcare. Second question, Air Liquide plans to produce biomethane. Is Air Liquide going to buy biomethane in very large quantities for grey hydrogen? Grey hydrogen by Air Liquide emits very little CO2, which would give us a price that is stable over time, so we could have long-term contracts with a hydrogen price pretty much locked in, so as to counter the fact that methane currently is constantly fluctuating, even if sale prices by large industry is passed through, even if prices are passed through to the client. To have a stable price is an appreciable advantage for sales. Third question. Revenue that you're presenting for are they gross co-employment, the income figure, and ditto for the income of the average and median employee? Is it gross? Is it co-pay, co-employer? Fourth question. Fourth question. I apologize. Let's perhaps I suggest we stop after the fourth. The mutual fund, so employees are enrolled in a mutual fund. Have you allowed the possibility for these employees to vote on the fund so as to give their view on the resolutions that you're putting to the vote? And is that taken into account in the vote of these employee mutual funds? Thank you. Well, that's a wide range of questions. François, would you like to address the first on healthcare, and I'll take the others? Yes, sir. I'll be brief. There are quite a few questions. So healthcare, in fact, represents around 15–70% of the group, because the other activities largely benefited from the increase in energy prices. We didn't see that so much in proportion for healthcare, so revenues continued to rise. Other activities grew faster. Healthcare, 70% in Europe, both for medical gases, oxygen, but also health in the home. And in Europe, it's growing strongly across geographies, in particular home healthcare. You mentioned Africa and Asia, that are small regions in terms of revenue. We see clearly that we're looking at long-term trends here, because I mentioned China last year, as you point out, and structurally China has a hospital organization such that many local players who don't really focus on medical oxygen. It's almost industrial oxygen. We offer the medical oxygen with all the service that goes. Unfortunately, owing to COVID, we were heavily solicited to provide large quantities of medical oxygen. It was all rather cyclical. Structural change toward medical oxygen for hospitals will take time. There's another area that's growing that I also mentioned, which is home healthcare. We did a number of pilots. Some have concluded very positively. Now the system must see the benefits and realize all the benefits both for patients and launch these new models in China. We're in talks with the authorities, but we're really at the beginning of the process. For Africa, just a word, the health system there is rather underdeveloped. We're working across two areas. Initially, to try and develop healthcare in the home activity. We made a few acquisitions in South Africa this year in order to develop home healthcare in the country, and that's pretty promising given the needs that are present. The other aspect, more on the margins of our traditional activity, over 50% of people don't have access to medical oxygen. Then we're trying to find new models in order to work with healthcare centers, for example, in Senegal or other West African countries. We have pilots underway to give access to medical oxygen through new units. About 1.8 million people today have access through new models to medical oxygen, thanks to these initiatives. So, as you see, development, still a lot to do, though.
On biomethane, as you know, we're in this business through our technology. We have the ability to transform biogas into biomethane. Biomethane has the value and it's injected into the network, and we are buyers, but we buy what we need in the production mix of hydrogen using methane. So we can buy certain quantities of biomethane, not necessarily huge quantities, that was your question, but in this respect, we produce, if we use biomethane, not grey hydrogen, but we manufacture renewable hydrogen using the European definition, since biomethane is considered to be a renewable energy, so it's not grey hydrogen. And the fact that we can roll this over time, there's no fixed price, but biomethane is expensive. It's a set price, but it's expensive. So this has to be based on the purchasing strategy, depending on costs. And biomethane obviously makes a positive contribution. Yes, we will have it, but we'll have relatively limited quantities. And this is more in turn an environmental approach rather than a cost strategy. Now, remuneration, well, all the figures are gross, clearly. So everything that you have, that you see as remuneration, presented as ratios, are gross figures. In other words, they do not include the employer charges, but they will include those charges included in the gross, and which produces the net, the FCP, the funds. The employees don't have a voting right on this. It's the fund manager that has the voting right, but the employees can choose the investment vehicle, which is very diversified, and the employees, of course, take part in the choice in the choice of funds, because there are salaries, there are employees on the board of these funds. So those are the answers to your 4 questions. I'll take question O, and then we'll go perhaps a bit further up in the hall. Sir, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair. I'm from the Individual Shareholders Association. First of all, congratulations on managing such a significant increase in the number of individual shareholders, which has risen from 500,000 to 750,000. And next year, I'm sure you'll reach 1 million. Now, my 3 questions, if I may. First, what is the share of executive officers bonus is included in the climate challenges? Is it going to increase significantly in the years ahead? Under Madame de Virgilis's aegis, who's the founding partner of Chapter Zero France. Next, a question on 550,000 shares, representing less than 0.11% of the equity capital. Why was this done? What is your share buyback policy, given that the state now has decided to tax these buybacks? Next, you've signed several partnerships with Total Energy in South Africa. Total Energy have set up a joint venture held in equal shares to develop a hydrogen station network for heavy goods vehicles on the main European highways. Air Liquide and Total Energy also signed a long-term contract in the context of reconversion in biorefineries in major sites of Total Energy in order to produce low-carbon renewable energy. First, where do we stand with all these partnerships? And next, the growing number of partnerships with Total Energy. Does this augur the establishment of a dedicated subsidiary? Thank you, sir. And thank you for congratulating us on the number of individual shareholders, and I'm sure that this will really touch our shareholder relations department. Will be very touched by your compliments and congratulations. What is the share of the remuneration which is dedicated to climate issues? Well, put simply, it's 10 to 15%. When you look at the executive officers, look at the CEO, or if you look at all the teams which have a variable share in their remuneration, where we have the CSR issues reflected, namely on society and governance issues. Could we increase it? Well, yes, of course. It's the management team and the board who both decide on an annual basis on the percentage on the recommendation of the management team, of course. So we have the ability to increase it. I don't think it will go down over time. I think, on the contrary, it may go up, but in any event, it'll be done in stages, and provided we identify very specific programs for the group. So 10 to 15% with a potential increase lying ahead. We're regarding share buybacks, 550,000 shares. Our policy has always been the same. We don't buy shares in order to give money back to the shareholders. We prefer emphasizing our dividend policy. We have 1.5 billion euros which are being paid out through dividends to our shareholder base. Share buybacks are there to offset dilution, namely through the capital increases reserved for employees and long-term incentives, which are adjustments, in other words, in order to avoid any dilution of shareholder remuneration. This hasn't changed. It's the same policy for Total Energy. I think you referred to some recent events, and I'll hand over to François to make some comments on this. Yes, thank you, sir. Well, Total Energy is a major player in energy in its various facets. So this covers various aspects. We have Total Energy as a supplier of Air Liquide, and you referred to South Africa, where Total Energy is one of the players that will provide us with renewable energy and will invest in new wind farms, photovoltaic sites. So we've selected 3 partners. Total has part of this supply, not all of it. So Total Energy as a supplier. Of course, we have Total Energy as a client in the group's history. And you mentioned Grand Puits, which is an innovative contract because we can use products or sub-products from the biorefinery in order to supply our hydrogen unit, which will provide biohydrogen and CO2. So through these capacities, we're able to roll out a contract which is very suited to large industries over 15 years, and Total Energy is our client. And finally, you referred to filling stations, partnerships. We have a joint venture in order to set up a network of filling stations for heavy goods vehicles in some European countries. And this is the partnership between 2 players in order to establish infrastructures. Hydrogen, Benoit has discussed this at length, and it's our job here in order to develop hydrogen. We can see clearly that no single player has all the answers. So this is very complementary between us, and we've spoken, you referred to Total Energy, but there are other groups in the energy area where we have these various facets. And I think this is augurs what is happening with the energy transition, whereby some players can be clients, suppliers, sometimes competitors, and we have to learn how to handle all this. We have to be able to create value and invent the future with them. And for Total Energy as such, this does not mean that we're going to move towards a subsidiary, because these activities, as you can see, are diverse. Thank you very much, François. I'll take another question, but I'd just like to be sure that I have a question coming from the other side. This is a general meeting, so everybody has to be able to ask questions. So the next 2 questions will move to the other side. So question V, if I may.
Yes. Good afternoon, madam. I'm delighted that a lady's asking a question. As earlier, I'd like to say thank you for this fine performance, growing number of shareholders. I've got 2 questions for you. On your climate pledges, looking through 2050, what's the probability of your having 100% renewable energy source? As you said very well, you're a pioneer, a pathfinder. Why just making do with carbon neutrality? Then I have a question for you as a woman. Why only 42% women and not 50% at your board? Because there were renewals. Thank you. Thank you for those 3 questions. That's quite clever. Just one, and in fact there are 3. Okay, so I'll try and take those briefly. 100% renewable. That would mean either renewable electricity or, as I said earlier, bio, biomethane gas, probability is pretty low, in fact, because when we do the maths, and it's often what is lacking when people make announcements, is to look at the small print, what it means. When you do the maths, you realize that the planet will struggle to operate solely with renewable power, or even more broadly with renewable and nuclear power. Nuclear remains controversial. Probability that we reach 100% is, as of today, pretty low. We have to leave, let the future tell us what the pace of renewal, of growth of renewable. 10 million tons that the European Commission set by way of a target have to be produced in Europe by 2035. 10 million tons represent 66,000 megawatts electric power. A nuclear power plant is 1,000 megawatts. That means 66 nuclear power plants. But in terms of capacity, solar and wind only operate a fourth or a fifth of the time. It's the equivalent in Europe. 250 to 350 nuclear plants in capacity. So we're far from having done the maths to achieve 100% renewable power. What's valid for a whole continent such as Europe applies equally to Air Liquide. So I don't think personally that by 2050 we'll be at 100% renewable power, but we'll do our utmost to maximize the share of renewables. Can we be more than net zero by 2050? What you need to realize is that this net zero target is set for 2050, is for all industries, extremely ambitious. In fact, we've pledged, like many other industries, I mean, we have a number of programs, but we're going to have to work for over 20 years so that all that comes about. So at this stage, we can't go further than net zero. We'll see. We'll review the situation in 10 years' time. It's the maximum we can do at the present time. Air Liquide is very energy intensive. We consume a lot of energy to produce our products. There's no miracle. We can't do otherwise. That's why it's a very ambitious target for us. 42% women on the board after this meeting today. Yes, thus far. We were between 40, 50. We're coming for 50, but natural departures and arrivals will oscillate between 42, the minimum imposed by law, and 50%, if not more. Why not? But since we've reached this threshold of over 40%, it's not voluntary. It depends on the talents we're seeking, the geographies that we seek to cover, the areas of activity that are important for us, and that dictates the choice of directors, both male and female, on the board. Be patient, 42%, but we'll do better. We're coming from 50. I'll take another question from over here, please.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Good afternoon. I've been a shareholder since the last century. Having reached an all-time high of 164 euros in April, the share price closed yesterday 161.96. That's an increase of 21% since the 1st of January. Chairman, last year you stated to us that it would be desirable to reduce the average age of shareholder. A share price at 160 euros is high for a young shareholder. When the situation stabilizes, we'll perhaps divide the nominal share price. My question is, do you think the time is ripe for that? Thank you. Well, thank you for that question. You've actually the answers in the question. I'm speechless. I can't really answer. The question is, has the time come? I said, and you no doubt recall, that above 100 euros we could ask ourselves the question, and you You could have said we're at 160, said Chairman, what are you doing? Or what are you going to do? Have you thought about it? You have a point. It's true that as part of the rejuvenation of our shareholders, we're really reaching out to shareholders to attract shareholders, and a lower share price would be key for that. So it's a serious question. You're right to ask it, and we'll table it. Not necessarily to answer it favorably this year, but at least to see to what extent we could do that. To do it is always an act of confidence. It's a message sent to the market that shows we're confident in the share price. Of course, we're confident, but I think that we don't necessarily have to wait until it reaches 200 euros to split the share. It's not a promise, but a fact. We're going to reconsider the matter. Thank you. I'll now take another question. Well, actually, the SMS questions. Do we have any text? Many of you sent in text messages, 123 questions by text message. I'm going to take a couple of more questions after the text message questions before the end. So, the order, the topics that were hailed by all of you: hydrogen, environment, climate, the prospects, share ownership, and human resources. So we have questions covering all these topics. I'll take the first question on hydrogen and strategy. Hydrogen will no doubt be one of the key energies for tomorrow. How do you plan to accelerate? And does Air Liquide plan to become the global leader in hydrogen? So, Madam, you've obviously carefully watched the video. We see the figure 111, first leader. That's the message we're trying to convey. Answer, yes, we plan to retain our leadership. It's difficult to know what pace hydrogen will continue to develop, grow, and how, but in terms of technology, investment, operations, know-how, Air Liquide plans to remain amongst the global leaders. We're three large industrial gas companies who have the experience in the field of hydrogen, broad experience, and in that trio, we plan to occupy pride of place. So how are we going to accelerate? Well, there's no growth in our business without investment. François recalled, as I did, we have 16 billion capex planned over 4 years, 8 billion, half in the energy transition, hydrogen. The real question that arises for us is to know if this 8 billion sufficient or enough, or if it's 10 or 20 or 30 billion. And when I cite these figures, I'm not citing them by happenstance. There are scenarios where hydrogen can accelerate sharply. The question is, it's part of the strategy that we're reviewing that will continue to discuss the board. If hydrogen were to accelerate sharply, how should we position ourselves in terms of investment? If we had to invest 20 billion, should we go it alone or in partnership? That's the type of question we'd address. But the goal is to retain global hydrogen leadership. Second question, environment and climate. I read the question. François is going to answer that. Possible scarcity of water resources. Is that a constraint for the group? François?
I think the greater scarcity of water is a constraint for all of us, even though Air Liquide does not consume a great deal of water, because the water we use is mainly cooling water, which is used to cool machines or for industrial processes, and it's recycled water, and then over 90% of it is put back into the natural ecosystem. And so water consumption is not necessarily a major factor. But this being said, we have become aware of the global phenomenon. In 2021, we decided to map all our sites in order to identify those sites which are in areas subjected to hydric stress. 1% of our sites are in that particular area, so we've risen to this challenge, and we're going to continue working in order to reduce the amount of water that we can take from the environment, and in particular on those sites where there is specific water stress. We should add that on water management, we have some rating agencies which have given us the highest possible rate on the management of industrial water. So this is very topical, and we want to go further. Thank you, François. Next, on the theme of the economic situation and the outlook, one of you is asking whether the Air Liquide Group will be able to maintain its impressive 2022 results for next year. We're not going to answer that question. I think we'll let the management team implement that, and I'll ask François to answer the question on Russia, which you asked. What is the financial impact for Air Liquide in terms of losses or depreciation of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the international sanctions that resulted? As Benoît recalled, we decided to stop all support to our Russian operations, to withdraw from our operational subsidiary, which is no longer consolidated since the 1st of September in our financial statements. This has led us to book depreciation for all of our assets to the tune of 580 million euros for 2022, which was fully booked to our accounts, which represents all our assets and commitments in Russia. Of course, this is a financial loss. The main loss is the loss of the potential market, which we'd envisioned in the previous years, and our commitment to our 700 employees who are still in Russia and who historically are still very strongly committed to serving our industrial clients and medical clients, since we supply many hospitals in Russia. Thank you. On share ownership, the traditional question of are you planning free share distribution in 2023 or 2024? Thank you for asking the question once again. I won't answer the question because we haven't made the decision what we're going to do. You know our policy. It's a policy of a regular free allocation of shares, and depending on the situation, we may postpone the free share distribution. But that was a nice try to get me make a comment on that once again. On human resources, perhaps a question here. All companies are facing a challenge in terms of recruitment. How are we going to attract new talents, and how are we going to keep them? I would like you to take that question, if you will, François. Well, we have seen momentum, which was towards greater mobility of employees throughout the group. And I think that in order to attract and ensure loyalty of talents, what's really important is to give meaning to work, to lend meaning to our actions, and to provide resources to our employees. So for all our employees, what we want is a remuneration package which is aligned with market practice. This is particularly important at a time when inflation is affecting everybody globally. And what really makes the difference and what attracts talents is the ability to contribute very specifically to building a better world. And the fact that we see a growing number of people who want to come and work in engineering, research, development in order to invent those solutions, I think that's a very good illustration of the meaning that is being sought by our new employees and, of course, by our existing employees. Thank you, François. Now, we'll go back to questions in the room. I'll take question K right at the top in the middle. That'll leave room perhaps for one or two extra questions. Question K. Good afternoon, Chair. Hello. This is a question that you've answered in part, but not fully, I feel. It's a question that we asked last year. I'm a shareholder, registered shareholder through my father, and my son is, and my mother is too. So it's a family holding. Now it's the share split. Last year, you said very good question, we're going to consider it, and perhaps, etc., etc. I'd like to insist a bit on this. If this were to happen, could you give us some idea of the timeline? And if it doesn't happen, is there any benefit for the company and the societies in not going ahead with a share split? Well, when we go ahead with a share split, all we're doing is dividing the cake into an additional number of shares. If you do have a 2-for-1 stock split, then you divide by 2. It doesn't change anything. Once you make that stock split, it lends more momentum to the share because the face value is lower, and then some shareholders who might have been hesitating, and this is what the gentleman was saying previously, can step in because the share price is low. So it creates appeal for the share, and it lends greater value to the share. So I'm fully aware of this. And you're right in asking the question, therefore. Now, do we know, have we set a date for this? No, we haven't discussed this yet. It's a fairly complex transaction. At Air Liquide, we have many shareholders. We manage the portfolio of some managers who are pure registered shareholders, so it's quite an onerous process, and we don't take this lightly. That's the best I can say, but you're quite right. After some time, you have to consider this. And as one shareholder was saying earlier, the share has increased by 20% since the beginning of the year. So that's great. We're very happy with this recognition. But this has somewhat accelerated the price increase, making the share more expensive. Please be patient. Question L in the middle, if you would. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson. Well, it's not quite a question. It's more by way of a suggestion, if I may. You've spoken at length about talents. I have a daughter who's a student at an engineering school and who greatly regrets not being able to discover companies such as your own. I cannot tell you how difficult it's been to get the internships, the compulsory internships in the third year. And now young people are looking at the GAFA, digital technology, but not necessarily companies such as your own, which I greatly regret. What could you do in order to open your doors to all young people, starting from troisième at school, in order for them to discover leading companies, in order to make them want to join you once they are qualified? Thank you very much, madam. That's an excellent question. And a suggestion as well, as you've said. François will give you some of the answers.
Well, thank you. We're convinced of that. We love our company. We love our business. We love industry. We're trying to attract people. We're doing a number of things very practically. In France, we have over 600 apprentices in our team. It's a way of offering opportunities to learn and grow. We're offering great many internships, short middle school internships in the French system, or end of studies internships in our various departments. So we could do more, but we're quite active. We do things more systematically with the industry through a number of organizations in order to promote industry, through universities, through schools, as early as possible. And so we're involved in a great many programs in France. I'd also just like to mention another example, not in France, but in other activities in the United States, where we organize a day during which we encourage our people, our employees, to come to work with their daughters. So that female talents can discover what industry is and what a fine occupation it is. I think it's very important to attract talents, and there'll be female talents. Thank you. So let's move now to a final question. We got one right at the back there of the hall. Over to you. Yes, Chairman, I'm a long-standing shareholder. I've been attending Air Liquide meetings for quite a long time. In mobility, we're moving more and more to electrics in terms of charging stations on highways, mega alliances in batteries, huge budgets by the automotive industry to electrify their fleet. You're a big visionary. What do you think? Is hydrogen going to be reserved for trucks, aviation, naval operations? There's already some electric buses, and we saw during COVID an alliance of strength between major industries, you and Schneider. So what's left of that partnership? Is it still on the cards? I mean, does it serve you to address global markets more readily by being united, by offering and meeting more needs and offering solutions for your clients? Thanks for that question. Electric mobility, you're right, but when we look at the facts, announcements, in fact, we have great many announcements in the electric field, and from time to time announcements that are not 100% electric. Toyota did one and maintained that, no, the future would not be 100% electric. I'm speaking of mobility. And furthermore, we've clearly identified the fact that Palais had endorsed the heavy-duty applications for energy, buses, trucks, aircraft, ships. You cited all the examples. In those areas, in fact, the electric battery is probably not a good solution. So, in fact, we need both. I urge you to try and, I'd say, decipher the kind of, they're always playing the fans of wall-to-wall electric and those who are against electric. So we're hearing all tunes here. There are a number of sectors or subsectors that are developing quite strongly and seriously in the hydrogen sector. That's in line with the studies we did 5 years back with the World Hydrogen Council, gives the leading key sectors in which hydrogen will develop. Without a doubt, there are a lot of people who are unsure of how the world's going to address energy. But what's sure is that hydrogen continues to grow. COVID and our alliance with Schneider is interesting because less than a month ago, a few weeks back, I discussed it again with the chairman of Schneider. We were attending a forum together. We said that it was a very interesting experience that we could renew. In fact, there were 4 of us. There were also Peugeot and Valeo from the automotive sector, the industrial venture set up. In fact, François had set up in the space of 8 days with these industries that such an initiative could bring a lot in the field of energy, other healthcare. These are areas in which we could move forward faster, and that we need to reactivate this energy that we're able to activate during COVID. That's the answer that I can give you. Let's leave it at that. I suggest for Q&A, and in the interests of time, let's move to the vote on resolutions.
Comme vous avez pu le constater,
as you'll have seen, our registration of voting system is digital. When you registered, you'd have received a tablet which allows us to instantaneously count the votes that you'll be expressing in the hall. A video is going to be shown explaining how the tablet works and how to vote. So your tablet is activated automatically, and hostesses are available if you have the slightest question. We're now going to vote on the resolution on the items of the agenda. The resolutions that are to be found in the document sent out to you prior to the meeting. I suggest we don't read the full text of these resolutions. I'll just read the summary on the screen. Firstly, the ordinary resolutions. First, approval of the company financial statements for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022. After voting for, abstention, or against, don't forget to confirm. Okay. First resolution, please vote now.
Le vote est clos.
No more voting.
For
99.85%, resolution is passed. Second resolution, approval of the consolidated financial statements for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Vote is closed. For 99.94%, resolution passed. Third resolution, appropriate of 2022 earnings and setting of the dividend. Please vote.
Le vote est clos.
Vote closed.
For
99.79%, resolution is passed. Fourth resolution, authorization granted to the board for a period of 18 months to allow the company to trade in its own shares. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting closed. For 98.47%, resolution passed. Fifth resolution, appointment of Madame Catherine Guillouard as company director. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Vote is closed. For 99.69%, resolution passed. Sixth resolution, appointment of Madame Christina Law as company director. Please vote now.
Le vote est clos.
Vote is closed. For 99.72%, the resolution passed. Seventh resolution, appointment of Mr. Alexis Perakis-Valat as company director. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Vote is closed. For 99.75%, resolution adopted. Eighth resolution, appointment of Mr. Michael Taman as company director. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
No more voting. For 99.75%, resolution adopted. Ninth resolution, ratification of the temporary appointment of Madame Monica de Virgilis as company director. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Vote is closed. For 96.96%, resolution adopted. 10th resolution, statutory auditor special report on agreements covered by Articles L. 2 to 538 and subsequent of the French Commercial Code. Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting closed. For 99.80%, resolution passed.
11th resolution, approval of the components of the remuneration paid during or awarded in respect of the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022 to Monsieur Benoît Potier, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer for the period from January 1st, 2022 to May 31st, 2022.
Le vote est ouvert.
Vote is open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 95,70%.
For 95.70%, resolution adopted. Resolution number 12, approval of the components of the remuneration paid during or awarded in respect of the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022 to Mr. François Jacov, Chief Executive Officer for the period from June 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Votes for 95.62%. Resolution adopted.
13e résolution, l'approbation des éléments de la
13th resolution, approval of the components of the remuneration paid or awarded in respect of the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022 to Mr. Benoît Potier, Chairman of the Board of Directors, for the period from June the 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Votes for 98.61%. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 14, approval of information relating to the remuneration of corporate officers stated in Article L221091 of the French Commercial Code. Voting opens.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Votes for 98.2%. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 15, approval of the remuneration policy for the Chief Executive Officer. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Votes for 94.98%. Resolution adopted.
16e résolution.
Resolution 16, approval of the remuneration policy for the Chairman of the Board of Directors.
Le vote est ouvert.
Voting opens.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Votes for 98.59%. Resolution adopted.
17e résolution.
Resolution number 17, approval of the remuneration policy applicable to directors. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour
Those for 99.66%. Resolution adopted. These are the extraordinary resolutions. Resolution number 18, authorization granted to the Board of Directors for a period of 24 months to reduce the share capital by cancellation of treasury shares. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends. Those for 99.19%. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 19, delegation of authority granted to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months to increase the share capital via the issuance of ordinary shares or marketable securities, giving access immediately and/or in the future to the company's share capital, with retention of preferential subscription rights for shareholders for a maximum nominal amount of 470 million euros. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 97.
Those for 97.28%. Resolution adopted.
20e résolution.
Resolution number 20, authorization granted to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months to increase, in the event of oversubscription, the issuance amount of shares or marketable securities. Vote open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 96.
Those for 96.21%. Resolution adopted. 21st resolution, delegation of authority granted to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months to perform share capital increases with cancellation of preferential subscription rights reserved for members of a company or group savings plan.
Le vote est ouvert.
Voting opens.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 99.
Those for 99.32%. Resolution adopted. Resolution number 22, delegation of authority granted to the Board of Directors for a period of 18 months to perform share capital increases with cancellation of preferential subscription rights reserved for a category of beneficiaries. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 99.
Those for 99.20%. Resolution adopted. Finally, ordinary resolutions. Resolution number 23, powers for formalities. Voting open.
Le vote est clos.
Voting ends.
Pour 99.
Those for 99.97%. Resolution adopted.
Le vote est maintenant terminé.
Voting is now over. Ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders, thank you very much for your confidence and trust. No further questions. I declare the meeting adjourned at 17:45. Thank you for taking part in this general meeting, either in the room or over the internet. Look after yourselves, your families, your nearest and dearest. Thank you all very much. See you soon.